The chains on my wrists were cold, but not as cold as the eyes watching me. I did not know how long I had been walking. My legs moved because the guards pushed me forward, not because I had any strength left. My side burned where the wound had opened again, soaking through the cloth they had wrapped around me. I could smell my own blood mixing with the strange incense that filled this hall. Everything around me was tall, sharp, and built for creatures much larger than a man. I was the only human here, maybe the only human many of them had ever seen up close. The court of the Scarl Queen was not what I expected. I thought I would be thrown into some dark cell, forgotten until they decided what to do with a prisoner like me. Instead, I was brought straight to the throne room, dragged past rows of tall alien nobles with silver eyes and skin like polished stone. They whispered as I passed. Some looked at me like I was an insect. Others looked afraid, as if I might do something dangerous even in chains. I almost laughed. I could barely stand. The throne itself sat at the far end of the hall, high above everything else, carved from black rock that seemed to drink the light around it, and on that throne sat the queen. I had heard stories about her from the other prisoners before I was separated from them. They said she never showed mercy. They said she had ended entire rebellions with a single word. Looking at her now, sitting still and silent while her court argued over my fate, I believed every story. "This human killed 12 of our soldiers," one advisor said, his voice sharp and full of hate. "He should be executed before the sun sets." "He surrendered when he could have kept fighting," another voice answered. This one was calmer, older. "That counts for something." "It counts for nothing. He is still an enemy." I stood there, swaying slightly, listening to them decide whether I would live or die. My mind was foggy from blood loss, but I understood enough. This was not a trial. This was a formality before an execution. I thought about my squad, about the ambush that went wrong, about the moment I chose to lower my weapon instead of shooting a wounded Scarl soldier who had fallen in front of me, unable to defend himself. I remembered his eyes, wide and waiting for the end. I remembered thinking, I am not going to be the reason this war gets any darker than it already is. That choice was why I was standing here now, wounded and chained, instead of dead on that battlefield. The queen raised one hand. The room went silent instantly. She rose from her throne. Every noble in that hall bowed their head, but I could not look away from her. She moved differently than the others, calm and deliberate, like she was carrying the weight of something none of them could see. Her robes were dark red, the color of old wine, and they moved like water as she stepped down from the platform. She was walking toward me. I heard gasps around the room. Someone whispered something in their language that I did not understand, but the tone told me enough. This was not normal. Whatever she was doing, it broke some rule that everyone else in this room lived by. She stopped in front of me. Up close, she was taller than I expected, with pale silver eyes that studied me like she was reading something written on my skin. I forced myself to stand straighter, even though my side screamed in protest. "You surrendered your weapon to spare a wounded soldier," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire hall. "Why?" I did not know what to say. My throat was dry, and every word felt like it cost me strength I did not have. "He couldn't fight back," I said finally. "Killing him would not have won anything. It would have just been killing." The room stayed silent. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, waiting to see what she would do next. Then she knelt. I did not understand what was happening at first. A queen, kneeling in front of a chained prisoner, in front of her entire court. The gasps around the room grew louder. Someone near the front looked like they might faint. She reached toward my side, toward the wound that had reopened during the long walk here. Her fingers were cool against my skin as she gently pulled back the torn cloth. I flinched, more from surprise than pain. "This wound is old," she said. "You have been carrying it since the battle." "They didn't exactly stop to bandage me properly," I muttered. A few nobles shifted uncomfortably at my tone, but the queen did not seem to mind. If anything, something in her expression softened, just slightly. She placed her palm gently over the wound. I felt a strange warmth spread from her touch, not painful, but strange, like static settling under my skin. I did not know what it meant, but I could see from the reactions around me that everyone else did. Several nobles stepped back. One advisor made a sound like he had been struck. "Your Majesty," the sharp-voiced advisor said, his voice tight with disbelief. "You cannot mean to—" "I already have," she said, standing back up, her hand still resting near my side. She turned to face the court, and when she spoke again, her voice filled the entire hall. "This human showed mercy to one of our own, when he had every reason not to. He chose restraint when cruelty would have been easier. In our ways, such a soul is rare, even among our own people." She paused, letting her words settle over the room. "I claim him. Under the old law, by the touching of his wound and the witness of this court, he is no longer a prisoner. He is under my protection." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I had experienced since I was captured. I looked around at the stunned faces, the whispers rising like a wave about to crash. I did not fully understand what claiming meant in their culture, but judging by the reactions, this was not something small. This was not simple mercy. This was something far bigger, something political, something dangerous. "This is forbidden," the sharp-voiced advisor said, stepping forward. His name, I would later learn, was Thren, and he clearly hated me on sight. "The old law applies to our own kind, not to enemies of the Empire. The law does not specify species," the Queen said calmly. "Only character." "He is human," Thren snapped. "A soldier who has killed our people. As have many of our own soldiers killed his," she answered. "War does not erase mercy when it is shown. It makes it rarer and more valuable." Thren's jaw tightened. He looked around the room, searching for support, but most of the nobles avoided his eyes. Whatever the Queen had just done, it seemed none of them wanted to be the one to challenge her directly. None of them, except him. "Then, I challenge this claim," Thren said, his voice ringing through the hall. "By the old law, if a claim is disputed, it must be proven through trial." The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, the first sign of real emotion I had seen from her since she approached me. "You wish to challenge a wounded man who can barely stand?" "I wish to challenge the claim," Thren said. "Not the man specifically. If your judgment is sound, it will survive the trial." I felt my stomach drop. Whatever trial meant here, I doubted it involved paperwork. The Queen looked at me for a long moment, as if asking whether I understood what I was being pulled into. I did not. Not fully, but I understood enough to know that backing down now would probably be worse than whatever came next. "What kind of trial?" I asked, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. Thren smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "A trial of restraint," he said. "Since the Queen claims you value mercy so highly, let us see if that mercy holds when your own life is on the line." He explained the rules briefly. I would face a combatant of the court's choosing, unarmed, wounded as I was. I would not be expected to win through violence. Instead, I would be tested on whether I could survive the encounter without resorting to killing my opponent, even if given the chance. If I killed to save myself, the Queen's claim would be voided, and I would be executed for breaking the very virtue she said I possessed. If I refused to fight entirely, I would likely be killed anyway. But if I found a way through without ending a life, the claim would stand, undisputed, forever. It sounded less like a trial and more like a trap designed to fail. I looked at the Queen. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes told me she was as uncertain about this as I was, even if she would never say so in front of her court. "I accept," I said, before I could think better of it. The combatant they chose was a young Scarel soldier, strong and clearly skilled, but I noticed something in his eyes when he stepped forward: hesitation. He did not look at me like an enemy. He looked at me like someone who had been given an unpleasant job. The fight, if it could be called that, began in the center of the hall. I was in no shape for a real struggle, and everyone in the room knew it. He came at me fast, testing me, and I stumbled back, barely avoiding his strikes. My side throbbed with every movement. I was not going to win this through skill or strength. I had neither left. But I remembered the battlefield. I remembered the choice I made there. Instead of trying to fight back, I let him corner me. I dropped my guard entirely, raising my empty hands, showing him I would not strike back no matter what he did. The room went quiet again. He hesitated, his weapon raised, waiting for an attack that was not coming. Finish it, Thren called out, his voice sharp with impatience. The young soldier looked at me, then at Thren, then at the Queen. I could see the conflict on his face. Whatever this trial was meant to prove, I do not think anyone expected me to simply stop. I will not kill an unarmed man, the soldier finally said, lowering his weapon. The hall erupted into murmurs. Thren's face twisted with frustration, but he had no argument left. The trial's rules were clear. I had not fought back, and my opponent had refused to strike a defenseless man. Mercy had answered mercy. The Queen stepped forward, her voice calm but firm as it carried across the hall. The trial is complete, she said. The claim stands. Thren opened his mouth to argue, but stopped himself, bowing stiffly instead, and retreating into the crowd. I do not think he was convinced, not truly, but he understood there was nothing left to say. The Queen turned to me, and for the first time since I had entered this hall, her expression was not unreadable. It was something closer to respect. You could have ended the challenge quickly, she said quietly, only for me to hear. Why risk everything to prove a point? Because it wasn't a point, I said. It's just who I am. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly, as if that answer settled something she had been silently asking herself since the moment she saw my wound. I did not know what my life would look like from here. I was still a stranger in a world built for people far larger and stranger than me, standing in a court that had nearly killed me an hour ago. But as the whispers around the hall shifted from suspicion to something quieter, something almost like curiosity, I understood one thing clearly. Whatever came next, I would not face it as a prisoner.